Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Diverse Thinking, Different Learning podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're welcoming back someone very special, Dr. Victoria Waller. If you've listened to her before, you know she is a force of optimism, creativity, and innovation in education. Dr. Waller has spent over 40 years helping students, especially those who think and learn differently. She helps them find joy, confidence, and success through creative learning. Her mantra, every child has strengths, passions, and genius within them. We just have to help them find it. Today, we're discussing how to use students' interests and creativity to enhance learning. Join me in welcoming Dr. Victoria Waller back to the podcast.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Hi, Dr. Waller. Welcome back to the podcast.
I know. I'm so excited.
I am so excited to have you back. It's been a while, but I felt like there was going to be a part 2 of our conversation because there's so much left to say and there's so much more to talk about. You know, we're going to be talking about a number of things today with a focus on creativity. You have an amazing workbook, which we're going to talk about later on. But you have spent so much of your work talking about and really emphasizing that every child has strengths and passions. And I'd love for you to kind of share kind of what sparked your commitment to using creativity as a tool for unlocking those strengths.
Very interesting. I was interviewed by a 16-year-old on a podcast. 16-year-old. She said, "Why do you like teaching children with learning differences? When did that start?" And I went back over 40 years and I thought about my first classroom and I thought about the little group of kids that I loved more than the other kids. I mean, I always liked teaching, but there was something about them. They couldn't read and they seemed to be they couldn't read, but they had so many strengths. Either they were creative or they were I was in DC, so they were into the presidents. They all had something. So I was more attracted to this little group of 6 because they were interesting and smart and they were just filled with things that the other children weren't. And then there was a reading teacher at the school and she was fantastic. And that just started it. I wanted to know all about these kids with learning differences. By the way, you will never hear me say they have disabilities because all kids with learning differences have abilities like you can't believe, but you have to find them. It's not easy, I have to tell you, even for parents, because parents are looking what their children can't do instead of, wait a minute, what can they do? And how do I get them help? Do not till they're 12. Start right away. You're seeing something's different. Don't get upset. Kids with learning differences, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it. Every single one I've met are smart and they have something, a passion that they love. I've never met a child who didn't have interests and strengths. But what you have to do is find those things. I think every child can learn. Every child wants to learn, okay? But it looks like they can't or they don't want to, but that's not true. I think that they're the geniuses of our times, which now, we're finding out that all these people that we thought, oh, they're this or they're that, they're really very smart and they have passions and strengths. Now, of course, how do we get this? How do we find it in these children in classroom and parents finding it in their children at home? What they can do. And my book is called Yes, Your Child Can. And I call it Learning Differences because they're not disabled at all.
And I love that. And I love your book. I love the fact that you're really focusing on strengths, which I think is So important when we're looking at kids who think differently, learn differently, or experience the world differently. And what's interesting about creativity is like, unlike other measures of cognitive functioning, creativity is inherently difficult to assess, right? You don't go in for an assessment of creativity because it's so multifaceted, it's context dependent, and it's influenced by so many things, including motivation, emotion, environment. Why do you think creativity is such a powerful and overlooked, in my opinion, tool for students with learning differences?
Well, I think, first of all, it starts with the parent and they're freaking out because their kid is not doing this or not doing that. You know, they're starting off very early, whether it's physical and they need physical help, and there are people that help you. Look at all along the way. Everybody can help, but you have to, as a parent or as a teacher, say, wait a minute, what is this child? What can they do? Not what they can't do. I have had children. Now think about these kids. I get them maybe in second grade, third grade. I have children. Are you ready? One, we flew up to Google and he interviewed the vice president of Google. Why? Because he was obsessed with how Google started. I didn't know how Google started. We sat there and looked it up on the internet. And then it so happens I ended up meeting this man in Australia. He was with children. And I went up to him. I said, oh, what do you kids like? Where are you from? And as soon as he said where he was from, I knew that was Google. So my student went to meet him. I had one child love cooking. Now I can cook, but I need a recipe. This child could just cook. 7 years old. He's still cooking too. He's 19. He loves cooking. I took him. He spent a whole night with Nancy Silverton at Moza, one of the best restaurants in LA, and he followed her around. And at the end, I said, what did you learn from all that? And he said, how hard Nancy worked. And I said, you know, if you work hard too, maybe you can become what you want to become. I've introduced, one was into sharks. I found Chris Fallows online. Now we have the internet. You just look up their email. And if you write them and say, my child is interested in this, would you answer some questions, or could we, do an interview with you? I've had many authors in this new thing I'm doing, which I have to tell you about. I just have to tell you about it. Every child has something they're interested in. I have now contacted all of who their heroes are, whether it's an author, whether it's a chef. I've contacted them. My children are writing. Some of them they're interviewing on the computer. They make up their questions. I type it up for them. And you say, but wait a minute, they have learning differences. Can they read? Well, they can read it because they wrote it. So they knew what they wrote and what they wanted to ask the people. And we are going to have a huge book that it's calling The Week. And my computer teacher's helping me put it together. And they're interviewing all these famous people, from movie stars to directors, everybody, authors. Many authors said yes to it. You have to find what your child or what the child in your class likes to do. My children, we contacted, he was obsessed with Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic, okay? The teacher in the first grade class said, you have to come dressed as your favorite character. So she looked at him because he was obsessed with it and said, and don't come dressed as anything from the Titanic. What teacher could say that to a child who loves Titanic? Well, I found Robert Ballard, and he connected with Robert Ballard. He ended up, I called the mother on the day. I said, did he go? He couldn't go as Titanic, although there's a second grade book on the Titanic. She said, Vicki, I kept him home, but I'm having a Titanic party for him on Saturday. And we all dressed as the Titanic. We all dressed in costumes. She made the food on the table. He helped because he likes to cook. And we went to see the movie, The Titanic. Now, it was a great mother. But I try to find what they're interested in. Third grade child, great kid. The teacher gives him, she gave different projects to every kind of kid. And she gave him strawberries. I said, what? Strawberries? He said, I have to do a report on strawberries. I said, I don't even understand that. Well, he was obsessed with roller coasters. They would go to their grandmother's in Ohio, where the biggest coaster place is in the world. I found the president. It wasn't too hard. I found the president. He interviewed the president on Zoom. He went there because he was going for Easter break. He went there and he interviewed the people that like ran all the rides. Then he met the president. I found the president. He met the president and he said, what's one thing I should take back? And the president said, and the little boy said, my mother lost her Gucci sunglasses on one of your roller coasters. And he said, oh, we have a place that if you lose something on these are the biggest roller coasters in the world. You come to this area and we have a whole room with anything you might have lost. And then the president said, tell your mother not to wear Gucci sunglasses on a roller coaster again. So funny, but I try to find their strengths and you can use it to get them excited. And teachers can do it too. Instead of saying, do this, like do strawberries. I don't know what third grader would do that. Mother easily could write a note. Gee, he likes this. Do you think it'd be okay if he researched this? Most teachers are going to say yes. They're going to say yes. They don't care what you research as long as you research.
And I think that one of the things that you're emphasizing and highlighting is the fact that if we develop activities that align with a student's interests, whether that be cooking, whether that be interacting or interviewing people whose work aligns with their interests, it's a way of sparking that creativity. And I think it's important to know, and it's kind of coming through with what you're saying, is that creativity is not just about art, which is what a lot of people think. It really is something that enhances problem solving. If you think about that interviewing, what questions do I have to ask? What are my follow-up questions going to be? It involves emotional regulation. It involves executive functioning, which includes planning and organization. And research shows that engaging in creative tasks can actually improve cognitive flexibility and working memory in children. And I love that the fact that the work that you do as an educational specialist, as an educational therapist, not only addresses the traditional areas, reading, writing, math, executive functioning, but you also are going outside the box and really helping to enhance that creativity that is in so many students.
So many students. It's unbelievable. I mean, can you imagine? I've been doing this for over 40 years because I started in that little classroom. And there's never been a child who doesn't have something that they love. And the thing is, this thing I'm doing now with them interviewing all these famous people, even this movie star in London, you find her email. And people are usually very nice about doing it. So even a parent could do it or a teacher could do it. And even the kids, the kids now can find it online, which is interesting of what they want to do. It's giving them the freedom to express. And teachers are seeing, oh, this kid can't read, but boy, is he smart. Okay, let's get him tested. Let's get him somebody to help him after school. Don't just say, oh, he's not smart, because they are smart. It's so interesting to me. And they know, when they know about something, they know everything about it. I mean, I don't know a lot of the things that my students get excited about. I have this student came to me. He's really amazing, truthfully, because he's 7. And he said, oh, I like the presidents. I said, oh, you do? Yeah. He knew everything about the White House in the first 3 weeks. And I know one of the Secret Service agents who was Bill Clinton's Secret Service agent. So he ended up interviewing him, of course. But he knew everything about the Secret Service. In the first 3 weeks, he built the White House. Okay. Do you understand that I have my garage. I should show you a picture of my garage. It's filled with thousands of books, but thousands of things to create with. He made these boxes on top of each other, and he made all of the presidents. He couldn't even read one word. He made all of the presidents, starting all the way back, and made little boxes for each president and what they like. There's a book called The Presidents and Their Pets. Best book you could ever read if a kid likes anything with the presidents. And so in every box, he had one of them had, they have elephants, and every president had something unusual, one pet, and he put them in these boxes. This child couldn't read. Well, we started writing about it. He would dictate to me. I would type it up, keep it in a 3-ring folder, and he started reading because he was interested in it. every book on the president. He knew more than I did, although I did know about the animals that each president had because that's my favorite book. But it was unbelievable. And the teacher was saying, oh, you're not going to be able to teach him. It was like a joke. It was in a minute he was reading because it was all about the presidents. We have to give them the freedom to create. When you're in and a teacher says you're going to do, you have to make, she had to know everything about the cities, the lakes, the whatever. She wasn't going to memorize all that. She was, I think at that time, maybe beginning third. I went into the garage in 15 minutes. She took a huge box and she made, here's a lake, here's a tree, here's the ocean, she got 100% on her test because she put it together in 15 minutes. That's how smart she is. So we have to allow that, and parents too. They'll say, oh, my child's creative. I said, don't be negative about your child being creative. It's incredible.
That's a good thing. That is a good thing.
But the mom and dad are worried because the child doesn't read. So they don't care that he knows every president and every president's animal. Second grade. He was obsessed with it. He's obsessed with something every year I've had him. He's quite interesting, really interesting child. And now, of course, he's reading and, top of his class.
And I really like this emphasis on giving children the freedom to choose how to express what it is that they've learned. And whether that is in creating a diorama, whether that is interviewing an individual and dictating that conversation to an adult while they are building the skills. Because obviously we still want them to learn how to read, but we know that their motivation for learning will be enhanced if what it is that they're reading while they're learning to read is aligned with their interests. And I just feel like from what I'm hearing is that when you give them that autonomy to choose, and obviously it's not possible in all areas, that really leads to meaningful learning outcomes.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, you can use, though, you don't have to buy anything. Amazon has a lot of boxes. If you have anything you get from Amazon, it's like when I get an Amazon box, my husband will go, are you keeping that one too? I said, but look at it. It's so interesting. I got a box yesterday. It was a plastic box. Oh, maybe 4x6, but it had little openings on each side. It was the best little box I had ever gotten. And, it had something in it, of course. I'm always buying something on Amazon. But the box, I thought, oh, someone's going to make something out of this. And I don't know. I'm creative, but I'm not like in a kid's head. And I'll bring that to one of my students and say, maybe we'll be reading a book. I said, would you like to have this box? I'm telling you, they're going to love this box. Coolest box I've ever seen. And they'll find something to make and they feel good. All of a sudden, I'm not stupid. All of a sudden, gee, I can do this. I can do this, which is can is a very important word. But I think what we have to do is we have to do things that they like. And it necessarily won't be in school. So a parent may have to, if they were given something they don't really want to work on, very nicely. If you're a parent, you can write to the teacher and say, listen, he's really interested in the presidents. Do you think we could do a report on that? 99% of the teachers say, oh, okay. They don't care. As long as he's doing the work and writing the report, that's all. So we have to be more proactive. I think parents are afraid. They don't, they're afraid because their child doesn't read and they're worried about it. And get help early. It's the most important thing. And it doesn't have to be somebody like me with a doctorate. It can be a good teacher that he loves or she loves. Fine. Maybe that teacher would work with the child after school. It's very important who they like.
Yes, that relationship with educators and educational specialists and therapists is so important because, again, they have to be motivated to do the work and motivated to enhance their learning and to build these skills. And so that relationship is so important. And again, finding someone who gives them the permission to pursue their interests and make these creative choices is important because that makes learning much more meaningful. And I know that you do a number of different creative activities. Are there favorite creative projects you have that build reading and writing skills?
The only thing I can say is thinking about all my students. Well, one was interested in Matchbox cars. Okay. We could build cars. We would read about them. How did Mattel start? As it happened, there was an article in the newspaper about one of the presidents of Mattel Matchbox cars. I didn't know that they have separate people, presidents. I called him. I'm telling you, either you call or you do online. We went and spent a day at Matchbox cars. Okay, here's what I have to tell you. The child was 7. He knew all the old cars. That's an important thing about the cars. Okay. I just listened to this adult who was the vice president of Mattel at the time talk to this little boy. I knew nothing about what they were talking about. They were talking about wheels. They were talking about color of cars, but it was really important. Now, are you going to be able to get hold of the vice president of Matchbox cars all the time? No, but a lot of times you can get hold of people. The shark expert was online. I would be watching him online and I just looked up. We found him and we emailed him. And they'll email you back. People are really lovely. Truck places. One parent every weekend would take the child loved trucks. They would go to truck places. And the teacher had said to him, he was in the disabled class, which of course I nearly had a nervous breakdown. How do you call a class for disabled children? He was smarter than the teacher. And this child ended up, and I think it's sort of interesting, he ended up president of a trucking company.
Yeah.
Okay. He went back to school and he said to the teacher, the man was still there. He must have been in his 60s by that time. He said, do you remember me? And the teacher went, no. And he said, you called me disabled. And he said, I guess I've succeeded somewhat. And he handed him his card that said his name, president of the big truck.
I love that.
I love that too. And the mother, of course, loved that too. But it's getting kids, just connect them with their heroes or what they want. Read about them. You know what I mean? And then you can get hold of them. But if not, just if you're a parent or you're a teacher and you give the child got apples or strawberries, to think as the parent, write a little note. That's all. And I'm sure I'd say 99% of teachers would say, fine, do whatever you want, write a report. That's what they care about. I think we have to give my 3 tips. You have to give the children freedom to choose projects. You have to know every child's passions and strengths. And if not, you have to find out what they are. Parents know, teachers really don't, because the kids aren't, they're not talking about, well, they do though. A little, or it's like the small kids in 2nd grade might be talking about trucks in a classroom. But parents have to tell the teacher, can they do this? Would that be okay? You write a little note to the teacher. And you have to read, research, talk to the kids, show them how to. I have to tell you, we don't have to show them how to use the internet. Children know how to find their truck pictures. They know how to find the sharks online. They know all these things. And you think they don't. They'll say, oh, my child's on the internet all the time. I can't stand it. So what's he looking at? She said, trucks. That's great. He can tell you about trucks. Use that to try to get him interested in reading and interested in writing. And of course, if your child needs help, get it early. Don't wait till they're in 4th or 5th grade and then already they're very upset. And teachers too, you see that something is right with the child, but you see some things they need. Okay, talk to the parents, say, what can we do to help your child? Very important.
Yes, I completely agree. I love that. Freedom, making sure that you know or learn about their passions and their strengths, and do your research and talk to the kids to better understand how to connect with them.
And this is parents, this is teachers, this is educators, this is ed therapists, everybody. I mean, some of the kids come to me and they're teaching them phonics in isolation, which I do hate that, I think, more than life itself. Pa, 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 ka, ka, ka. And I'm thinking to myself, this little girl loves everything about clothing. I know that you're thinking, oh, so what? Make clothing. Let's talk about here, dress. It has the der sound. I don't use the sounds in isolation. I use them in the word, then take them out after. So if you want the DR, you want the blends, you want the diagrams, use what they know to teach what they don't know. Use their strengths and passions. Every child has them. They do.
And we know that we can use music, we can use art, and we can use storytelling as entry points for building those core academic skills. So yes, they need to learn phonological processing, but we also know from the research that connected text is better than reading words in isolation, like what you're saying.
Well, the latest child they all love, what's her name? Taylor Swift. I have to be careful with the words and what they say in the songs. But if children like a certain song, I print out the song. I ask the parents, of course, and I get permission because some of them are a little not so good for third graders. But if they love music, just give me a song and find the words with blends. I don't care how you find them, but if you find them from a song, I can guarantee you the child's going to remember what a blend is. I can tell you that. If you use what they love. Most parents go, oh God, all they do is listen to music. Great. Okay. I have to make sure I check out the words on some of them.
Definitely check the lyrics before you print them out.
Then I do the blends and the digraphs and the compound words, but they remember it because it's in something they love. If you're sitting going, pa, 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 they're not remembering that, or Taylor Swift, the SW. Great. Going to learn blends in a minute.
What would you say, Dr. Waller, to teachers who feel they aren't creative enough to foster creativity in their students?
But you have to find what the students like. Just put out, if the child likes, you'll know if you ask a parent, what does your child like to do? And they all say, be on the computer. Fine. What do they like? Okay. They like music. Okay, good. They like music. The teachers find out. Even at like the conferences, you ask the parent, what's the child love? And if she says, oh, he likes trucks, fine. Put that down in your little lesson plans, what every child likes. Truthfully, you can ask most children. They'll be able to tell you if you say, oh, what book? Even the book. I have a student. This was amazing. Now, I've been doing this for over 40 years, and he loves these books by Lev Grossman. Okay, I've never read them. There's actually books that I haven't read. It's called The Silver Arrow. I was so into this book about this train that you have no idea. I wrote to Lev Grossman. My student's going to interview him, of course, because I wrote to him and said, I've been doing this for over 40 years. This is my most favorite book ever. And he's written a lot of books, and I didn't even know him. And the child, his mother read it to him. I don't know how she found it, though. But she's reading it to him, and he's now on the second book. He can't put it down. All he wants to do is write about it, talk about it. Of course, he's going to interview him on Zoom. Yep. But it's amazing what you can find out about a child, even talking to the child. What do you like? It's so, besides Taylor Swift, what do you like? And they'll tell you. I find it interesting that even 7-year-olds will say, oh, I can go on the internet, and if you do this, Dr. Waller, and you do this, then you'll find that. It's always amazing to me. And now I really do use it for finding people that I want to connect my students with. I do. I use the internet a lot for that. It's really, and you think, oh, keep them off. Well, a lot of kids play games and stuff, but still, I like that they look for things they're interested in. I think it's very important that they do that. And you can do it as a parent or as a teacher or an ed therapist or a tutor. Use what they like to teach what they're not so good at.
I think that is really the take-home message. And I mean, the work you do is so meaningful and it's so impactful. And I think it's because you're so passionate about the topic and about the students you work with. I can hear the excitement when you talk about them and that you found a way to connect with them. And it sounds like that's something that adults who work with kids, whether you're a parent or an educator, can do, is you begin by asking and really researching what it is that child is excited about, and then use those interests and use those strengths to really help them to learn.
And I think teachers can do it in class. It's not that hard. You can find out what the child, instead of giving the child strawberries, the third grader got strawberries. Oh my goodness. It was and he was brilliant. I went, strawberries. I think that's one thing I'll never get over, that a third grade boy, not that a first grade girl would like strawberries, but third
May
grade.
not be the most interesting topic to write about. So can we find something that would resonate more with them? And I think that's where your point about freedom of choice is so important, right? So you don't get a blank page. You get more information that will help you to better understand, again, the child's strengths, but also help you to see where they're struggling so you know where to provide the support that they need.
Right. And I think the teachers, even if a teacher is not creative, all they need is the junk in the room in little boxes. And you can have everybody bring in something today they might like to build with, and you keep it in a box.
I love that idea.
But using the child's strengths and passions, what's interesting to them? I have these tree houses. On Amazon, you can get parts of the tree. It's so interesting. And the treehouse books I love. I just love the treehouse books, and I love the author. I met him. I was dying when I met him. But I put all their actual treehouse pieces. So you get the circle and you get the long poles, and you can hot glue them together to make a treehouse. I've done a lot of tree houses. I had a little girl who loved little dollies. I said, fine, we're going to make little dollies out of clay and we'll put them in the tree house. They like that tree house. So you can get everything on Amazon. Everything. It's unbelievable. I mean, I looked up tree house. I looked up pieces of trees, and they have really nice pieces of trees. It's amazing what you can find.
Yes. And I also want to mention that not only Amazon, it's actually a good idea to have kids go to stores themselves and pick out those items like Michael's. I love.
Oh, I love Michael's.
Yes, I do. Because then they can go in and actually pick out the items that they want to use to build whatever it is they want to create. So, and there's a lot of places like that, not just Michael's. I don't want to be a commercial for Michael's or Amazon. There's a lot of great places and communities.
Yeah, but especially even if you have a garage and you just keep a box with I'm telling you, this little box I got yesterday, I'm so excited. I have no idea what's going to be made from it. I'm just going to give it to one of my students and say, okay,
see what they do with it. Yes.
What are you going to do with it? Oh, no, I wouldn't make it. I would always give it to them. But it's easy to do that. Even parents keep a little box in the garage or keep a little box in a closet with interesting things and children will pick out what they like. It's very interesting. I can say, oh, let's make something with this, and they'll find some weird thing in my garage and go, no, I want this instead. Old cameras. You can get them really cheap online. Old cameras. Nobody uses cameras anymore. They use their phone, and they make characters from it. If you go, I have an Instagram at Dr. Victoria Waller, and you'll see a lot of the things that I do, the actual things that the kids make and the projects. Scroll through and you'll see what I'm talking about. And you'll see, and maybe it'll, like, if you're a parent or teacher, you'll get an idea. Or let your child go through it. Kids like to go through my Instagram because I have a lot of what the kids make.
And we're going to provide a link to your workbook because you've got such great ideas there for parents and educators. And I just love the ideas with all of the tools that you need to create. And thank you for that, for giving us that link and making sure that our parents and educators and our listeners have access to it. Dr. Waller, if listeners want to reach out to you to learn more about the work that you do, ideas that can spark learning in students, what is the best way for them to contact you?
I think the best way is Dr. Victoria Waller at Gmail, and it's Dr, no periods or anything, Dr. VICTORIAWALLER at Gmail. And I always answer everybody.
Wonderful. I cannot thank you enough for being here. It's always such a pleasure talking to you. And I think that, one of the take-home messages that I'm getting from this conversation is that creativity isn't just about glitter and glue. It's so much more. It's about connection. It's about aligning interests. And it's a cognitive process. And this helps kids engage. It helps them to engage deeply. It helps them to think critically and really feel confident in who they are. And that's what we want.
Oh, and it does make a difference. They feel incredible. And if you want to be teaching them blends and digraphs, if you do it on a Taylor Swift song or whoever, they're going to remember a blend and a digraph. They will remember it if you use something that they're interested in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Waller.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation today. Be sure to check out the link in the show notes to access Dr. Waller's workbook full of activities and ideas. And as always, if you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it with others who care about helping children thrive. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.